You don't need I'm doing this my way.
He a legend, he a legend, he a legend. He a legend, he a legend, he a legend. He a legend. Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items. Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items.
What's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and today we're going to take a look at all of the matches for next week, or like this upcoming week. So we have 3 days of LPL, a couple days of LCK, and then 2 days of the LEC and the LCS. So basically for this video, it's similar to the one I made a week or two ago, but this time I'm going to spend less time on the games that I think there's an obvious bet on. Last night, Top Esports won, and then V5 upset RNG. I actually, when I started making lineups, I started making lineups with V5 because I thought it was just a better way to make lineups, and I thought it was going to be less popular, but apparently there was a very popular play. But let's move on. Actually, I guess the results for the LCK were Live Sandbox beat Fred at Brion, so that was an upset. It was an upset, but was it really? I mean, I don't really think it was. And then Genji beat Nongshim, so I had both of those. So I went 3 for 4 yesterday. But let's talk about the games coming up, and we'll get started in the LPL. So we have tonight we have LNG against Anyone's Legends. Anyone's Legends has won 2 of their most recent matches. I'm not picking them against LNG. Then we have Billy Billy Gaming against Invictus. Billy Billy Gaming is still using Doggo. Uzi is not playing yet, which doesn't really matter to me. They're going to be the overwhelming favorites in both scenarios. Then the first game I think is pretty interesting is Rare Atom against LGD. So in LGD's last match, they played World Elite, and World Elite just got Beishang back. So I think that people were not really giving enough credit to Beishang coming back, and if you're not paying close attention and remembering like that aspect of the matchup, then you might not give LGD enough credit for how they played. So let's do lane by lane. So Cube against Fearness or Garvey, I think it's about break even. You might want to give a slight edge to Cube. Junja against Shadow. I think I prefer Shadow, but it's kind of whatever. Then in the mid lane we have Forge. Forge against Jay, but it might also be a different mid laner. So in the mid lane, I don't really think it's a big deal. Actually, I don't even think that Forge is starting anymore. I think it's like Strive now. But that's not really a huge concern for me either. It's really a play on, like, I think that World Elite could be competitive with Rare Atom. I know that LGD can be competitive with World Elite, so I want to play LGD against Rare Atom. So I think that I'm going to be on that side. Eric has had some good matches recently. He had a good game against World Elite, and they had actual chances of winning that matchup. So for that one, I'm going with the upset and LGD. Then we have Ultra Prime against Weibo Gaming. Weibo Gaming is a minus 370 favorite. I'm a little afraid of Weibo Gaming in these kinds of spots. People in Discord were talking about it after their upset victory the other day. We love betting Weibo Gaming when they're underdogs. When they're favorites, it always feels very bad. So I don't think that I would touch this line at minus 370. And I would try to think about how Ultra Prime gets the upset here. I think it would be if they played really well in the bot lane, but I do prefer Huanfeng. So I think that I'm going to have a tough time playing Ultra Prime. Then we have EDG against FPX. This is a spot where I want to play FPX. I know that they haven't looked as good recently, but after a few weeks in the LPL and after like the Demacia Cup and everything, people had a high opinion of FPX. So if people are starting to move away from that opinion of them, I kind of want to to catch them right when they're passing that break-even point between my opinion of them and everybody else's. So 4 and 3. Let's get the cross box. So FPX beat Anyone's Legends, lost to JDG, beat LGD, lost to LNG, beat RNG, beat Ultra Prime, lost to Weeble Gaming. So they've lost to teams that you would expect them to, and they've beaten most of the teams that you'd expect them to, and they also beat RNG. That was in the opening match of the split. So the question is, can they compete with somebody like EDG? I think that they can, so let's talk about the lane by lane. So FPX against EDG, Xiaolahu against Flandre. I think that Xiaolahu could give Flandre a run for his money in the laning phase. And then we have Clid and Gory against Jai Jai and Scout. I think that is definitely Jai Jai and Scout favored, but I could see Clid and Gory, winning, depending on draft. And then we have LWX and Hong against Viper and Mako. I definitely prefer Viper and Mako. But that's a pretty big number at 259. It might be a better DraftKings play than it is a better DraftKings play than a bet on the sportsbook, because theoretically they could lose 1-2 and still be the higher scoring team. I think that this is the kind of matchup that might actually give us access to EDG's upside as well. So I am fine taking EDG. It is the side that I prefer. I just don't know if I prefer it as much as the sportsbook would make me in order to justify betting on it. Then in the next match, we have OMG against Team World Elite, and I'm not projecting the upset here, but I think the number is crazy. World Elite should not be plus 326. I think that OMG is the better team, but this line should be like minus 200 to plus 150 or something like that, or like plus 170. Something in that range, not 3 something. And again, we can go to the cross box. So OMG beat Anyone's Legends, lost to BLG, lost to EDG, beat Invictus Gaming, lost to JDG, lost to LGD, beat TT, beat Top Esports, but that victory is a lot less impressive nowadays. So I think this is a really good spot for World Elite. That's one that I would definitely take a shot at. Then we have BLG against Anyone's Legends. I'm not playing Anyone's Legends against BLG. And then the last game is, according to the sportsbook, a 50-50. I would much rather have the JDG side. Like, before the season started, like, Top Esports would have been the favorite, probably, minus 150-ish. But they've been underperforming this split, and JDG has been about where I thought they would be. So I like the fact that it's a coin flip. If this was like JDG as a favorite, I wouldn't want to play it, but the fact that it's 50-50 is good enough for me. So let's go to the LCK. In the LCK, we have Kwangdong Freaks against Homolife. I'll be on Kwangdong Freaks. Then we have Damwon against DRX. I'll be on Damwon. I would love to play DRX in that spot, but I just don't know if I can really justify it, because it's, I'd rather do plus 1.5 map. So that's when I'd look at plus 1.5 maps. T1 against KT Rolster. I don't think that KT Rolster has a great shot to beat the sportsbook line, but this is the kind of matchup that is going to tell us a lot about KT Rolster and their upside for this year. They've been performing pretty decently. They're 4-4, but they've had a lot of tough matchups so far, I believe. So they lost to DRX, they lost to Damwon. Oh, they lost to Live Sandbox. That's not good. And then they lost to Nongshim. So the Nongshim loss, I know that Nongshim is 3-6. That's really not that bad of a loss. It's a pretty talented team overall. And they haven't. T1's the only team that they haven't played yet. They beat Gen G. Like, those are the kinds of things that you like to see. So I think that I definitely want if KT Rolster can beat Gen G, then I believe they can also beat T1 or Damwon, which is also why I have this one blank down here. But then the next match is Gen G against Live Sandbox. I'm on Gen G. DRX against Homolife. I'm on DRX, but I wouldn't bet them at this number. This is another matchup. This is another team that, like, I like betting them as underdogs. I'm going to be afraid of betting them as favorites. Kwangdong against Fnatic Brion. I think that Kwangdong Freaks is definitely better than Fnatic Brion. But again, I just don't have a good feel for Fred Brion, and I haven't had a good feel for them for like a year or 2 years. So I don't have a good feeling one way or the other. And then Dom 1 against KT. So I guess since I'm kind of supporting KT a decent amount in this video, I should talk about why from like a roster perspective. So Rascal, I think, is a pretty good top laner. Rascal against Birdall could definitely win a lane. Rascal against Zeus can do the same thing because they're like the teams are very good overall, Dom1 and T1, but their top laners are not they're not unbeatable. Like Birdall is a good player. I like their talent for the long term, but they're going to be on the more difficult side of matchups a decent amount. The more difficult side of the matchup a decent amount of the time, which means Rascal might be able to draft the easier side of a matchup, force Birdall to make plays in order to create an advantage. And if he doesn't create that advantage, then you're looking good. And then Rascal against Zeus, same thing for Zeus. But in that scenario, it's much more likely for that lane to go even. Then in the jungle, we have Cuz and Gideon. I think Cuz has been playing more. Cuz is an okay jungler. I'll take both of the other junglers ahead of him. Arya against Faker and Arya against Showmaker. Obviously, Arya is not thought of as the elite player that Showmaker or Faker are, but there are ways for them to get into drafts that are going to allow Arya to look good. We've seen some good performances out of Arya so far this year. I think I'm pretty sure they're a good Orianna player. They would definitely be able to play those enchanters in the mid lane, which is not difficult, but they could pull them out if the matchup dictates it. And then I think like with Damwon is that they're always somewhat likely to pick TF. So if I was KT Rolster, that might be a spot where I just give them TF and try to play around TF. I think I think that's basically how I feel about that. And then Aiming in Life is a good bot lane. I think I probably prefer them to Deokdam and Kellen, but then I do prefer Gumayusi and Keria. But I think that this is a spot where you might just want to play KT Rolster at plus 285 and 215 and just hope that they hit one of them. That's what my mentality would be. If you believe in KT Rolster and they have a chance of beating T1, then you should make both of the bets. Because if they beat T1, that line against Damwon will come down as well. And then the last game is Nongshim against T1. Nongshim, I think, is a pretty good team. It depends if their full roster is back. I know they've had a lot of COVID issues. So Kana against Zeus, I think I prefer the Kana side. Dread against Owner, I prefer Owner. BDD against Faker, it's definitely Faker favored, but BDD is good. And then Gumayusi and Keria, I like them a decent amount more than Ghost and Effort or Peter. It depends on who's starting. It seems a little thin, I guess. But 294 is a pretty good number. And again, maybe it's just, bet them map 1 and map 2 or bet them plus 1.5 maps. Then we have the LEC. And I've been getting destroyed in the LEC recently. So let's just start with tomorrow's games. So Fnatic against Astralis. I mean, I don't think I'd want to light $100 on fire, so I'm not going to bet Astralis there. If you have the balls to do it, good for you, but I can't do something like that. Misfits against Excel is an interesting matchup. That's a blunder. I don't love Misfits or Excel, and I think that Excel has been playing pretty well recently. They also have a pretty easy to execute playstyle in the sense that they need to weather the storm in the early and mid game. And then eventually they're going to hopefully outscale. So I think that Finn against Hyrit it's pretty much a 50-50 matchup. I know that I talk a lot of shit about Finn, but he's not a bad player. He just wasn't worth the amount of money that CLG paid for him. Markoon against Zlatan. They're both pretty good young junglers. I don't think that either of them are special. Nuke Duck against Vetio. Vetio is definitely thought of as the better player, and I talk a lot of shit about Nuke Duck as well. But I think that he's done okay so far this season, and his team has been getting him into good spots in the draft. So, like, if he's playing a simple, overpowered champion, then yes, like, he's going to look good, and he's going to be competitive with the other middle. He's going to be competitive with the mid-tier mid laners. I don't think that he's a mid-tier mid laner. And then we have Patrick and Mickey against Neon and Mersa. I think that you just have to kind of prefer the XL bot lane outright. So I'm going with XL. Then Vitality against BDS. I'm definitely on the Vitality side. If they lose this one, it's looking pretty sketchy for their chances to win the LEC. G2 against SK Gaming. Again, is it possible that SK Gaming wins here? Yes, but I'm not going to bet $100 on it. The best of ones, there is the additional volatility, but still, I can't convince myself to bet that. Then we have Mad Lions and Rogue. So this is a spot where before the season started, if you did a look-ahead line, you would see that Mad Lions probably would have been the favorite going into the season, and the line has moved a lot. So I think this is a chance where you can kind of go against what has happened so far this season. Rogue, at the same time, Rogue has been kind of moving in the wrong direction. So there's public skepticism about how they've been playing recently. I don't agree with them necessarily, but I think that this line kind of almost forces you to bet Mad Lions. So I think that I would bet, like, I don't want to bet Mad Lions. I'd rather root for them to lose. Yeah, for that reason, I'm going to bet on Rogue. But if you bet on Mad Lions, I'd understand why. It's actually a pretty good spot if you still have the same opinion of Mad Lions' talent as you did before the season started, which I guess is a difficult thing to maintain. Then we have XL against Astralis. This line just seems wrong to me. Like, how is XL an underdog to Misfits, but a minus 323 favorite to Astralis? That just seems kind of too much. So I want to be on the XL side, but I can see Astralis winning this game. So my opinion of this matchup is much closer than the sportsbook line, but not enough to where I think that the Astralis bet is like a very good bet. Then BDS against SK Gaming. I'm kind of surprised by this line as well. I thought that SK Gaming would be the favorite. They played earlier this season. BDS won the first match this season. I mean, I don't think that should really make them the favorite, though. Because BDS has looked very bad in a lot of their games. Like, they're not executing their team compositions the right way. So SK Gaming, we know, has beaten Mad Lions twice. That's a little bit more impressive. I'm kind of leaning SK Gaming. I don't love it at 106. I wish I was getting a little bit more value, but I think I'm willing to make that bet. Mad Lions against Misfits. Again, I just root against Mad Lions in general, so I'm not going to bet on Misfits to win this game, but if they win, it'll feel like a double win. Then we have Rogue against Vitality. I think that Vitality is definitely good enough to beat Rogue. I know they haven't looked good so far this year, but this is a bet on talent. Again, it's a pretty thin line. I think that if we didn't have any preconceived notions about the teams and we just had sports and we had lines that were based on performance from this year, I think this number would be much higher. It'd probably be like Rogue minus 200, maybe even like 225. In that case, it would be an auto bet Vitality. But I think that the sportsbook probably knows that if they hang that kind of line, they'll get a lot of action on Vitality. But I still want to be on the Vitality side here for my pick. And then G2 against Fnatic. Fnatic's getting to the point where I just think they're overrated. And I mean overrated from a sportsbook perspective. Like, should they be the favorites against G2? Yes. Should it be minus 161 to 122? That's about right. I want to be on G2 side because, like, if I'm playing DraftKings, I think that I'd want to have exposure to G2. Other people are going to be less confident in putting money on them, so that's where I'd probably want to get that exposure. Let's go to the LCS. So the LCS, there really aren't a ton of interesting games. So 100 Thieves against Golden Guardians. I'll be on 100 Thieves every time. TSM against Immortals. TSM listed as the underdog here. I know that they've looked really bad. I think that they may have hit the turning point in their game last week when they almost had that comeback. I think it was that against Immortals? No, that was against Golden Guardians. Yeah, that was against Golden Guardians. So in their match against Golden Guardians, they kind of got to the point where they started playing around tactical completely, and that gave me a lot of confidence in what they could do moving forward. Their support is going to play some academy games as well this week, I think tomorrow. I don't think that they're getting demoted. I think that they're just going to play with the academy team and then play again with the main squad, and hopefully that makes a little bit of a difference. I don't really think that it will, but if they end up winning, they'll talk about that. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. EG against Team Liquid. I still prefer Evil Geniuses. I know that Team Liquid beat them pretty convincingly in the lock-in finals. And did they haven't played yet this year, right? EG. No, they haven't played so far this year. So, I have such a high opinion of EG. I want to bet on them every time they're an underdog this year, probably. So that's obviously the side that I'm on. I'm going to skip the FlyQuest ones for now. So C9 against CLG. Obviously, I'm taking C9. CLG has been horrible. Evil Geniuses against Immortals. I'm definitely on the Evil Geniuses side. Then we have TSM against Cloud9. And again, this is the one where you want to bet it a couple days in advance. I think that TSM at plus 472, if you thought that going into the season you'd get them at plus 472, you would bet it without even thinking about it. So you kind of have to have the belief that they can get into a draft where they get tactical onto a hyper carry and they can play like they did at the end of that game against Golden Guardians. And I do think that it's possible. It's unlikely, but again, this is a plus 472 line. What does that equate to? 472. It's probably around 16%. Do I think that TSM wins against Cloud9 15 or 16% of the time? Yes. At least. So I want to be on the TSM side for that one. And if you want additional reasons to do it, just watch the Team Liquid video. I know that TSM is not Team Liquid. I'm not trying to say that they are. But Team Liquid kind of created the blueprint for how to be competitive against Cloud9. I hope other teams pay attention to that. It'll force Cloud9 to adjust. I don't think that it makes Cloud9 much worse, but it'll help us get the most out of Cloud9 when they have to continuously pivot their draft strategies in order to deal with the other team is doing. This is more of a value bet. I just think there's too much value on TSM. Yeah, and the other thing is if TSM is blue side, I feel much better about this bet, and I'm pretty sure that they are blue side, or at least we'll have side selection. Then we have Dignitas against Golden Guardians. I want to be on the Dignitas side here. I'm not betting it at minus 286. That seems like way too much. And then Team Liquid against Counterlogic Gaming. Obviously, we're taking Team Liquid. So let's talk about FlyQuest. FlyQuest has to play Dig and 100 Thieves. So far, FlyQuest is 3-1. They're tied for first. And they're big underdogs to two other teams that they're tied with in the standings. So let's go with Dignitas and FlyQuest. And let's think about why FlyQuest has been successful so far this year. So FlyQuest has been drafting intelligently. They've been playing enchanters. But they've also been playing a decent amount around Takui. And I don't think that Takui is like a great player, but I think that they're probably better than Blue. I think that Kumo against Fate God, Kumo does have the chance to carry a match against Fate God. We haven't seen it this year as much, but we have seen carry performances out of Kumo when they were on Evil Geniuses. Jose Diodo against River. This is a spot where, stylistically, I think that Jose Diodo might get the more beneficial side of the matchup, just because how Dignitas has been drafting. River is capable of playing many different kinds of champions in the jungle, but Jose Diodo, I think, is more likely to go into like a Hecarim game, like without really putting much additional thought into it from the coaching staff. So if we're getting something like that where it's double enchanter, you also have a Hecarim, you have a hard carry in the bot lane, and then you have Takui on like just a solid mage that can follow up on the engage of a Hecarim or be additional disengage. I think that they could have Dignitas could have a really tough time dealing with that, because Dignitas has looked good. Fake God is playing more of like the later game style champions in general. And Dignitas is the one who has to make more. They have to make more of an effort during the drafting phase. If they don't want to play against enchanters, they're going to have to ban it out. If they're banning that out, then it's going to give FlyQuest potentially additional power picks. And I think that FlyQuest is also blue side. Man, I didn't mean to close those tabs out. Let me just see if this is gone. It should still be there. Yeah, it's still there. Good. So as I was saying about Dignitas and FlyQuest, then in the bot lane, I do prefer the Neo and Biofrost side by a decent amount. But again, teams have to draft in a way that highlights the talent discrepancy. And I don't think that Neo and Biofrost will necessarily do that. While we might get like a Biofrost Thresh game, which is a high skill cap champion, I could also see Dignitas playing like utility AD carries, or maybe FlyQuest tries to ban out like one or two of the hard carries to force Dignitas to ban out the other one, and then we'll get a new kind of draft. It's partially like I think that they could just beat them straight up, and it's also because I think that the line is just a little inflated, because people have talked about Dignitas favorably for a longer amount of time than FlyQuest. And then in the second match, we have FlyQuest against 100 Thieves. And again, there are certain teams where I think that you can kind of feel good about betting on them as underdogs. And if you think that they have a chance against Dignitas, you probably also want to bet them against against 100 Thieves. So if you think that they will beat Dignitas, I would definitely make that bet, as well as the FlyQuest against 100 Thieves bet before the games start this week. So Kumo against Someday, again, I prefer Someday as a talent overall, but Kumo can win matchups against Someday if the draft goes well. Jose Deodo against Closer, I do prefer Closer, but there are a lot of drafts where like Jose Deodo will just have the beneficial side of a matchup. Closer is good enough where he can win those matchups as well, which is a little scary. But it will come down to draft. And then Abadage against Takui. This will be a good match, a good matchup to watch, because I think that most people have a high opinion of Abadage. So if Takui can do it against him as well, that would be very impressive. So far, they've beaten They've beaten no established LCS mid laner. So, this will be a good test. I think I definitely would prefer to play FlyQuest against Dignitas. Talking through it, it feels a lot more difficult to bet them against 100 Thieves. And if that's the case, then it might just be right to bet 100 Thieves in this spot. Like maybe I'm buying in too much into the hype. But that's basically it. That's all I've got for you this week. Well, that's all I have for you today. I'll have a video every day discussing the next day's matchups specifically. But I like getting these ones out of the way because people who, want to know in general how I feel about the matchups, this is a good start for their week. But yeah, that's all I've got for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.